to start by checking in with you. You're in Lviv, where you just heard air sirens right before we went on the air. How are you holding up and how are you doing?
Doing fine. Thank you for having me on. Yes, unfortunately, we had quite a few airs today, but relatively speaking, comparing to Kiev, Lviv is a much safer place.
And of course, I should mention that we may be having some technical difficulties throughout our discussion, but we're going to do our best to get you this information. Vadim,
Hello?
we're about a month into Russia's invasion of Ukraine. You're on the ground there. Just give me a sense of the scale of the impact this is having on the health of those who are still there who haven't gotten out. We may have lost Vadim, so we are going to continue to check in on him.
I'm here.
Oh, Vadim, you're here?
I'm
Okay.
here now. Thank you. Sorry.
Vadim. No worries at
Technical
all.
difficulties.
No, we completely understand, Vadim, and thank you so much for sticking with us here. Can you just give me a sense of the scale of the impact this is having on the health of people on the ground, and what is that looking like to you?
Imagine, obviously the city of Kiev, that was a very thriving city. The war started 4 weeks ago, and now, obviously, first of all, a lot of people left, and the people who left who are here in Lviv now, a lot of them have post-traumatic stress disorder. They need medical care, and the Lviv system is obviously outstretched, as well as what's going on in Kiev. In Kiev, the bigger problems are, first of all, most military duties are taken by the injured and soldiers who are being treated. So the civilian population is having issues, first of all, with accessing the care because of the danger of moving around, of accessing the clinics. And second of all, obviously, because being in that situation, it creates a lot of health hazard for people who had prior medical conditions. A lot of commercial clinics similar to ours had to make very painful choices. Like, for example, we had to close all of our ambulatory clinics. We only have our hospital open right now because we need to conserve not only the national resources, but as well as medical resources. We used to be a private hospital. Now we switch more to a charity model. That's why it's one of the bigger problems that will continue to be and continue to exist, because sooner or later we'll have to make painful decision as to what to do and how to continue support over 4,000 medical workers that we had at our company.
Well, tell me a little bit, we're going to get to the workers, but tell me a little bit more about the demographics of the patients you're seeing. You mentioned a lot of soldiers, but of course civilians in the area. I'm curious, what does the typical patient look like? Is it more people who have been injured due to the invasion? Is it people who have pre-existing conditions? Or are you treating really everyone across that spectrum?
Started all of the if people can postpone their visit to a doctor, they are. So our slice of what's going on changed. The people we're treating right now are mostly the urgent cases. So we still have our paramedics and we have our emergency vehicles that go out and bring people who require immediate medical attention. So people like that are a vision of what we do right now. The second portion are people with serious systematic diseases that require continuous care, such as oncology, people who started chemo treatments, as well as diabetics. For a while, there were issues with insulin in Kiev region. Right now, those issues are mostly resolved. So urgent care, chronic care take the heaviest portion of what we do right now. Pediatrics still there are quite a few kids who are left in Kiev, and obviously they do get sick, especially in those conditions, considering the amount of time they have to spend in bomb shelters. So we do get kids who are just getting, flus and things like that. Otherwise, it's mostly urgent care and chronic care.
Got it. Well, obviously, there have been a lot of challenges here. I mean, getting supplies in, economic infrastructure challenges, obviously continued attacks on medical clinics. What would you say has been the biggest obstacle so far that's prevented you from providing care the way you typically would?
Obviously, so number of things. First of all, is limited access. We have, people can only travel at certain hours because of the bombardments and because of the limit of military hour. So at night or in the evenings, you cannot travel the city. Because of the checkpoints throughout the city, it takes a lot longer. So people try to conserve their time. That's first reason. Second reason is a lot of our medical workers, some of them went to join the armed forces. The other part is joint territorial defense. Some people evacuated to Western Ukraine or to other countries. The last reason that we're slowly coming up to is the financial one, because we've been paying so far the salaries, and at some point we'll have to make some painful decision as to how many workers we can continue to support. That's why we are actually currently in various conversations with various international charity organizations to see if maybe they can support us so we can continue providing medical care in the Kiev region.
Right, which of course is challenging also in terms of just getting supplies across the border that you need there. I also want to point out one other thing, which is that the World Health Organization says there were 6 attacks on healthcare facilities in Ukraine just on Sunday. That brings the total number of attacks on healthcare facilities to 52. And that's a really big number for us. That's about 2 attacks per day on health facilities since this Russian invasion of Ukraine began. Vadim, I know that your main business had to move from Kharkiv to Lviv. Was that because of these attacks?
We are currently looking into ways of opening up clinics in Lviv. First of all, because there's quite a few people from Kyiv who moved to Western Ukraine, as well as number of our doctors. And in addition, we need to make sure that our doctors are safe. So depending on how situation will unfold in Kyiv in the future, we might have to make other painful decisions in terms of, because as you correctly mentioned, a lot of attacks on medical facilities. We were considering marking our facility outside, and we're hoping to prevent from bombing. But what the history in Syria and the history now in Ukraine shows, marking the facility as medical actually does not stop the attack. It's actually the other way around. It increases the chance of your facility being bombed. So now we're currently not being marked in any way.
Well, beyond the attacks presented by bombings are also just the impact of war in general. I know that a hospital in Mariupol was seized by Russian troops last week. There were 500 taken hostage inside of that hospital. How concerned are you about the likelihood of something like that happening at one of your clinics?
Especially in the beginning of the war, we were extremely concerned about that. About our main hospital. That's why we closed all of our ambulatory clinics in the outlying cities. So, for example, we had a clinic in the town of Irpin, which is now, heavy fighting, and it's partially taken by Russian forces. Our main hospital is in the heart of the Kiev. I personally do not believe that Russian forces have the capability of taking over Kiev. So I do not think, at least as of right now, that they have a chance of taking it over. We're more concerned about the bombing and also about the access being cut off. So we will no longer be able to receive medical supplies and food for the hospital. But for now, it's been holding up.
Final question for you, Vadim. What do you want people in the U.S. who may be listening to this conversation to understand about the challenges of providing healthcare in Ukraine right now as this war unfolds?
I think the main thing is that it's not just, the war in Ukraine or the war for the territory of Ukraine. It's truly the war between the good and the evil. And it has to be won, otherwise it will continue and expand further and further. In terms of the healthcare, the sick and injured ones are usually the ones who take the brunt of the war, and they're the least protected. And we need to do, and I think the world needs to do the most it can, is to provide medical care to the people who are injured and sick, especially if they're in a poor area.